Before we start, let me give you a major trigger warning that the information in this video is incredibly disturbing. Then I'm going to tell you that in the United States of America, you cannot prosecute a person solely based on their thoughts, even if their Google searches include things such as how to cook a human alive, what does human flesh taste like, best rope to tie someone up with. Even if they have contributed to conversations in chat rooms about stalking girls, kidnapping girls, selling girls, and cooking girls. And even if the people on your list of victims include your wife and her girlfriends. Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. Truly is. Before you get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really appreciate it. Okay, so today we are talking about former NYPD officer Gilbert Valle. According to his memoir, Raw Deal, Gil grew up in a safe and quiet neighborhood in Queens, New York. He had plenty of friends, spent a lot of time at theme parks, he was popular in school, he got good grades, and he played a lot of baseball. His parents did not get along well at all, and he goes on to say that if they weren't fighting, it was because they weren't talking. But the two finally decided to separate in 1989 when Gil was just 5 years old. His mother, Liz, is described as the soft, loving type, while his father, Gil Sr., is described as the strict parent. But he says that both of his parents were very involved in his life. They were very loving towards him, and he had a great upbringing. At age 11, Gil started becoming aware of his sexuality, and he began to get turned on by bondage and S&M. He goes on to say that while in junior high, there were 3 girls he was attracted to. He would pleasure himself while thinking about them and claims that in his pleasuring fantasies, they were always tied up. There were never any other people involved in the fantasy. He was never the person tying them up, and they would never be naked. They were always dressed in either a school uniform or a bathing suit. In the late 1990s, Gil would discover AOL, and it would be love at first sight for him, just like most of us, including myself. Now you know I'm old. He says that this was his first introduction to PORN, going on to say that he was mostly interested in pictures of women in bondage, claiming that he would get aroused by a girl tied up with a gag in her mouth, and whether or not she was clothed was never an issue for him. However, if he saw the same beautiful girl but she wasn't tied up, he would not be turned on simply by images of her, even if she was naked. Gil's first love was in the autumn of 2012, and it was a girl by the name Melanie. He describes her as freckle-faced Irish girl who was comfortable just being her. She was okay with wearing no makeup and having her hair pulled back in a ponytail. He talks about how he fell really hard for Melanie, but Melanie made it very clear that she liked talking to Gil, being friends with Gil, and hanging out with Gil, but she was in no way interested in having a relationship with him. Gil would be in love with Melanie for the next 9 years, but their relationship would never go further than a friendship, and in fact, the two never even shared a kiss with each other, even though Gil talks about how badly he used to want to plant one on her. He did, however, have countless fantasies about Melanie over their 9-year relationship. He started off thinking about her being helpless, tied up, and gagged. But as time went on, his thoughts got much darker. In his mind, she would be abducted by others, cooked and eaten. He further goes on to say that she became his favorite girl to pleasure himself to, and the fact that she rejected him made it that much hotter to him. He claims that in regard to Melanie, he was never the person that was doing the kidnapping. He would imagine an old redneck couple grabbing her, tying her up, and gagging her. Because she had a feisty personality, he would picture her fighting ferociously, but she would never be strong enough to overpower them. His relationship with Melanie would finally, thank God for her, she dodged a bullet in 2002 when Gil left to attend the University of Maryland. Gil claims that these thoughts never affected his school performance, and as far as sex was concerned during the day, he only thought about conventional sex. It was at night, when he was alone in his room, that his thoughts regarding sex would turn much darker. When he was a junior in college, he would come across his very first Canibal, P-O-R-N, website called Mucky's Kitchen. He describes this website as having tons of gorgeous models depicted as food, but in a fun and sexy kind of way. There's no blood, there's no gore on this website. It's simply gorgeous women, naked, laid out on platters of vegetables with apples in their mouth. The website had a section that was titled Related Links, so Gil clicks on it. One of the websites was titled Dulcet Girls Forum. There was a message board on the site where users were able to share pictures and write fictional stories about being kidnapped and cooked. He recalls that one user's catchphrase was ABC: abduction, bondage, cannibalism. As Gil's time at the University of Maryland was ending, it was time for him to pick a career. So it's at this point that he decides to become a New York City police officer. He takes the exam in 2005 while he was still in school and ends up scoring a 99%. Kudos to you. Here's the thing that I've noticed up to this point while I'm reading his book, and at this point I'm on chapter 2. He's quite egotistical. He thinks his shit doesn't stink, and he has very little respect for women. When he spoke about Melanie, he felt the need to include that she was by no means the prettiest girl in school. Why? Why do you have to include that? He speaks about a girl named Kate that he hung out with at the University of Maryland, which Kate comes up a lot later on. And he describes her as cute, but not a supermodel. When he spoke about getting a 99% on the entrance exam for the NYPD, he followed it up by saying the only thing he was confused about is why he didn't get 100% on the test, because it was an absolute joke. After graduation, Gil went to live with his father while pursuing a job with the NYPD. He graduated the academy in December, and he started at the 32nd Precinct. He talks about how stop and frisk was very controversial when he was a cop because African Americans were complaining about being targeted and harassed by police. Civil rights groups were getting involved. Blacks and Hispanics were getting stopped much more than the whites, but blacks and Hispanics were the ones that were committing most of the crimes where he was assigned. Why do we bring this up? Why are you bringing this up? Because the truth of the matter is, the irony of these statements that he makes in his book is that he does it knowing full well that what he is involved in at night after he gets home, which we're going to get into, because it's an absolute mindfuck for me. I'm 100% pro-police, but he is absolutely the epitome of a dirty cop, and he gives the good cops a bad name. In August of 2007, Gil was assigned to the 26th Precinct, where he would remain at for 7 years until he says it all comes crashing down. You, sir, are the only person that contributed to your demise. In 2009, Gil decided to create an eHarmony profile and an OkCupid profile. He says he never really believed in dating websites, but after a coworker of his met his wife on one, he decided that he was going to give it a shot. He says he went on about 5 or 6 dates with women that he met through the site, but luckily for them, there was never any chemistry there. During this time, he was still living at home with his dad, working nights in Harlem, and he would often surf the web after he got home at about 12 o'clock. He would typically surf BDSM PORN sites. That's when he comes across the related link for a website called the Dark Fetish Network. Okay, well, Gil claims that's what happened. And when he clicked the link, it brought him to a private members-only chat room named Dark Fetish Net. Inside this chat room, people would discuss their dark and twisted fantasies with each other. Gil really enjoyed this site and he began spending more and more time on it. He had somewhat of a routine for himself on work nights. He would get home, he would check his emails and his Facebook, he would check the score of the Yankees game, and he would be on the Dark Fetish Network by 1 a.m. The introduction to the Dark Fetish Network states, "Welcome to the social network where you won't feel like an outcast because of your dark fetish. Why? Because this place is created by people like you for people like you. So feel free to look around, meet some crazy, in a good way, people, and become part of our growing adults-only 18-plus community. Please also remember that this place is about fantasies only, so play safe." He says that he spent quite a bit of time on the site and says that he became even more enthralled with the site when he found people posting pictures of women that they set, and they would like put under the caption things like, "What would you do with her?" So Gil decided to create an account with the screen name Girl Meet Hunter. He wrote about having fantasies that involved kidnapping, bondage, and cannibalism, while making friends with 4 co-conspirators in the process. Christopher Ashe, a librarian from New York City, Dale Bollinger, a nurse from England, Michael Van Heist, a mechanic from New Jersey, and Ali Khan, a butcher from Pakistan. Not long after creating an account, Gil made his own What Would You Do album with real girls in his real life, with real pictures from his real Facebook page. He claims that he went to Maryland that weekend, and when he returned home, he had more than 50 comments from other users on his photos. He read all the comments, responded to most, and thought about the ones he liked best that evening while he was pleasuring himself. You cannot make this shit up. You just can't. You cannot make this shit up. After this, life stayed fairly normal for Gil. He was still living at home, working quite a bit, going on dates, and going on the DFN website when he felt the need for gratification. A short time later, he met the woman that would ultimately become his wife on the dating site OkCupid. Her name was Kathleen. She was originally from Nevada. She was a teacher, and her father was a police officer. She knew the type of hours that police officers had to put into their job, and she thought being a cop was the coolest job ever. They exchanged about 3 or 4 messages back and forth. Then on October 10th, 2009, the two decided to go on their first date to a place called Bistro 1018. The two met for dinner. They had an amazing time. Then they went over to the movie theater to watch Couples Retreat with Vince Vaughn. After the movie ended, Gil took Kathleen back to her home. The two shared a very passionate kiss goodnight. Kathleen got out of her car, telling Gil to text her when he got home. He says that he's on cloud 9 the whole ride home, describing her as smart, funny, a great person, and a lot of fun to be around. After he gets home that night, he washes up, he gets into bed, and then he fantasizes about Kathleen being kidnapped by crazy people, stripped naked, and laid out on a platter with an apple in her mouth, all while he is pleasuring himself. two went out one more time and shared a few flirty text messages. Then one Saturday night, while Gil was working, Kathleen texted him to ask him what he was doing. She asked him to come over after work to watch some TV and have a few drinks. It's at this point in the book that Gil admits to the fact that he was still a virgin, saying, quote, "While I still never had sex, I had been around enough to know what this meant," end quote. After about a year of dating, Gil and Kathleen moved in together into a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. A month after moving in together, in January of 2011, the two found out that they were expecting. This was a completely unplanned pregnancy that the couple was not prepared for. Nevertheless, though, kudos to him on this. Gil focused on working as hard as possible and making sure that the baby had everything that she would need for her arrival. The two were able to save up enough money to get a two-bedroom apartment about 10 minutes away from where Gil grew up in Queens. The entire time all this is going on, Gil is still going on the Dark Fetish network. And at this point, he has about 15 to 20 people that he would chat with regularly. Then in late September of 2011, at 6:22 a.m., Gil and Kathleen welcomed a baby girl into their family. Both mommy and baby are healthy, and Gil is described as being an amazing dad. 2 weeks after the birth of their baby, Gil passes the sergeant exam, and Kathleen quits her job to be a stay-at-home mom. January 23rd, 2012. The first time that Gil communicates with a man from Pakistan by the name of Ali Khan, and 4 days before he begins talking to Mike the mechanic from New Jersey, Val has a chat with Tim Chase. In these chats with Tim, Gil discusses supplying Tim with Facebook images of real women that he knows as potential targets. A date for the napping. The price Val will charge for napping her. Surveillance that he has performed on his target, who in this case is a woman by the name of Andrea, and where she will be brought once she is taken. Gil writes, "We are go for the 27th. Chase writes, "Cool." Gil, "I wrote all kinds of notes down like a log. Times she leaves, times she gets back. She goes to the gym after work every night. Takes great care of herself." Good to hear that. Been keeping good track of her, huh? She's been the priority every day, and her building has no cameras. I can lower it down to 4,000. Chase says, "Sounds good. Better for both of us. You have a time plan for delivery?" Gil says, "Depends on how far you are." Chase says, "I'm 100 miles east of Erie. Middle of nowhere." Gil says, "Okay, good." While Val claims in his chat with Chase that he is all set to take her on January 27th, 2012, this target date passes without incident, inquiry, comment, and no kidnapping occurs. To be fair, it is said at trial that Tim Chase is a fantasist, like Gil claims to be. However, his chats with Ali Khan and Mike the mechanic were more real, as they were actual kidnappers. Also on January 23rd, 2012, Gil communicates with Ali Khan from Pakistan, who is allegedly a real kidnapper. He talks to him about kidnapping his wife Kathleen and Andrea. Gil sends pictures of Kathleen and writes about her for the 4th of July menu, saying, "You're such a piece of shit." She's 26 years old, 5'7", 150 to 160 pounds, married and has a baby daughter. Her name is Kathleen. She has a lot of meat on her ass, thighs, and calves. I'd love to suspend her upside down by the feet. She is young, so a lot of blood will flow. The live cooking is just for my entertainment and for her suffering. I want her to experience as much pain as humanly possible through the ordeal. She's going to suffer incredible pain. The R will be the R will be the easy part for her. This is your wife. This is your fucking wife. Well, at this point, this is the mother of your child. January 27th, 2012, Gil communicates with Mike the mechanic. He sends Mike 4 Facebook images of women and offers to take any one of the 4. Mike picks Andrea. They begin negotiating a price between $4,000 and $5,000. Gil expresses that he has concerns about getting caught. He tells Mike that he can take her during the week of February 20th because she's a teacher and she's on vacation that whole week. Mike and Gil agree on $4,000 for Gil to take her and bring her to Mike. There's never any discussion about when and where he'll be paid and where she will be brought to. Mike tells Gil that he will message him later. January 27th, 2012 through February 27th, 2012 come and go with no further talks about napping Andrea and no steps are made towards taking her. February 9th, 2012, after discussions about napping Kathleen died down, Gil and Ali Khan focus their attention on taking Andrea. Gil tells Khan that he's been waiting outside Andrea's house. Andrea lived more than 500 miles away in Columbus, Ohio, and there is actually no evidence that Gil ever traveled to Columbus, Ohio. He tells Khan that he was able to get a stun gun, which he plans to use to zap that bitch in her home. He says that he will then tie her up, pack her in a large suitcase, and put her in his car. There's no evidence that Val ever had bought a stun. He did have a firearm, handcuffs, and a police shield, but he never mentions any of these items and to Ali Khan or to any other co-conspirators. He says that once Andrea is at his home, he tells Khan that he intends to R-word her before tying her hands and feet with cooking twine and cooking her alive. Val assures Khan that Andrea will easily fit in his oven. In reality, Val owns a standard size oven that is not capable of accommodating this. As to timing, Val tells Khan that February 20th is a holiday, so that is the target weekend. Andrea Noble was not taken on that weekend, and there's no evidence that Val ever took any steps towards napping her. This is like really, I'm having a hard time with this. I really am. I'm having a really hard time with this. I think because this is so messed up. February 14th, 2012. Gil and Kathleen go to dinner at Il Toscano in Queens, New York. While there, Gil would get down on one knee and ask Kathleen to be his wife. Like, this is what I mean. 2 weeks ago, you wanted to tie her up and cook her. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. They would end up marrying shortly after in Spokane, Washington, in a very small and intimate wedding of about 20 people. The reason Spokane was picked was because Kathleen graduated from Gonzaga University in Spokane, and it was very sentimental to her. After their wedding, life went back to usual for the couple. Gil went to work, and Kathleen was a stay-at-home mommy. The other thing that remained the same was Gil's use of the DFN. He would have women contact him, ask him to role play with them, and they would tell him that they wanted to be the victim and then they wanted him to be the captor. But the problem for Gil is that didn't turn him on. He preferred role playing that involved only women that he knew. I think that's where I'm like, what the? This would give him the opportunity to picture how the woman would sound when she was being gagged and having an apple shoved in her mouth. He describes sex with his wife as vanilla and claims that it was okay for him because he feared that if he told his wife about his fantasies, it would scare her off, which it most likely would, because who wouldn't? I guess not everybody. I'd be out the door quick. Bye. Defending his actions by claiming that they were just thoughts and that he would never hurt anyone in real life. They're nothing more than fantasy. Even comparing it to a man that fantasizes about having sex with his wife's best friend, or a man that fantasizes about having his female boss on her knees in front of him. Okay, but that's not the same thing as tying her up and cooking her and eating her, because you know what? These women come out of it. Your way, they don't. So yeah, that's probably not the same thing. I'm going to go with no, not the same. February 27th, 2012, Gil communicates with a man that goes by the name Jack Crow. Jack Crow is also described as a fantasist and has conversations with Gil about Andrea. Poor Andrea. This poor Andrea, she keeps getting pulled into this. Gil says, I am torn between a couple of things. Part of me wants to put her in the oven while she's still alive, but at a very low heat, like 160 to 170. I figure without much oxygen in there and with all of the screaming, she will suffocate herself within 20 minutes, and that won't ruin her body. Jack Crow says yes. But the other half of me just says, don't risk it. Just string her up by her feet and butcher her. Jack Crow responds, well, I do love a good butchering. This is the difference. Jack Crow and Tim Chase are fantasists. So basically, they claim to be the same thing that Gil claims to be, which it's just all fake. Mike the Mechanic, Ali Khan from Pakistan, and the nurse from England are actual kidnappers. So even if Gil never really intended to have any of this play out, they most likely did, where the other two never did, because they are fantasists. Okay. In June of 2012, Gil starts talking to Dale Bollinger, the nurse from England, who goes by the screen name Moody Blues. The two would chat often about their fantasies and about Dale coming to the United States so that they can one of the girls that Gil knows in real life. A person they spoke about quite often was Kate, the friend from the University of Maryland, and the two would stay in touch. The two were still in touch up to this time, and every time Gil would go to Maryland, he would meet up with Kate. Okay. July 9th, 2012, Gil communicates with Moody Blues and tells him fictional information about his life. He tells him that he's single, that he has a big gas oven that can be used for cooking a human. He lives in a secluded house in the mountains with no one around for at least 3/4 of a mile. He goes on to tell him that he's thinking about a Labor Day cookout with Kimberly as the main course. Because remember, his wife Kathleen was going to be the 4th of July main course. So Kimberly's going to be the Labor Day main course. The cookout will happen at his house in the mountains, and Gil assures Moody Blues that he could stay at his house for the weekend, going on to tell him that it's very close to the airport and that you'll have to take many windy roads to get there. He also promises Moody Blue that he will make chloroform and purchase rope for him at the Home Depot. Again, to Gil's credit, these are all fictional statements, and none of these purchases are ever made. Moody Blue replies that Labor Day is the 3rd of September, and that doesn't leave him much time to get a plane ticket. This is what I mean. He's not playing with you, dude. He's not playing with you. So, in my world, okay, in my world, you're just fucked up. July 10th, 2012, Gil sends a document to Moody Blues entitled Abducting and Cooking Kimberly, a Blueprint. This is your friend for years. The blueprint stated that the date of the kidnapping for Kimberly would be on September 2nd, 2012, and it included a list of items that would be needed. Chloroform. Strongest kind of rope that can be found. Gag, duct tape, separate bag to gather her clothes, gloves, and cheap sneakers. Again, none of these items were ever purchased, and when Moody Blues asked for Kimberly's address, to his credit, Gil refused to provide him with that information. Does that make this less fucking twisted? Abso-fucking-lutely not. It just doesn't for me. Like, this is the thing that they continuously are driving home, but it's all fake, but none of it ever happened. I don't care. It's still ridiculously fucked up in my world. Like, it's just not okay. This is just not okay. But we'll keep going because I need to know what you people think. Like, am I out of my head? Is this like, no, we should not lock him up and throw away the freaking key for this? July 17th, 2012. Gil tells Moody Blues that he is having lunch with Kimberly on Sunday, July 22nd, and sends him a link to a website entitled How to Make Chloroform at Home, Chemical and Lab Safety. July 20th, 2012, between the hours of 4:27 a.m. and 4:52 a.m., Gil makes the following Google searches. How to nap someone. How to duct a girl. How to chloroform a girl. Can you use chloroform to sleep with your girlfriend? How to chloroform a girl. Napped girl. July 22nd, 2012. Gil, his wife Kathleen, their baby girl, and Kimberly have a wonderful lunch together. Kimberly and Kathleen get along amazing, and Kim just dotes over how adorable their little baby girl is. Never knowing the sick, twisted shit that is her friend is plotting behind her back. Oh my God. When the family returns home, Gil tells Moody Blues that Kimberly looked absolutely mouth-watering, and then the napping is never discussed again. However, communication between the two would cease until August 21st, 2012, so there's that. Then on August 21st, 2012, Gil sends an email to Moody Blues titled Meet Kristen. Inside the email are numerous pictures of Kristen, a recent graduate of Gil's high school. He tells Moody Blue that Kristen is small enough to fit in his fictional oven. He doesn't say fictional, but it's fictional, which is 5 feet long, 4 feet deep, and 4 feet high. He goes on to tell Moody Blue that Kristen is attending college in Maryland, that it's about 4.5 hours away. In reality, Kristen is attending college in New York. August 22nd, 2012, Gil performs Google searches for Kristen's address, but there's no evidence that the two discussed her again after August 24th, 2012. Okay, so here's the thing. As a police officer, Gil has access to information about people that us regular people don't have access to. And he would use this privilege to look up his potential victims. August 22nd, 2012, Gil performs Google searches for Kristen's address, but there's no evidence that the two discussed her again after that August 24th day. Then August 25th, 2012, Gil tells Moody Blue about Andrea, the prosecutor. Gil shares that even though she lives about 6 hours away from him, she's the girl that he would most like to eat. September 8th, 2012, Gil tells Moody Blues that he has decided on Andrea to be the one that he eats. Moody Blues tells him that he should follow her home from a party or something and then take her, to which Gil responds that he doubts that would work in New York City. September 9th, 2012, Gil contacts Moody Blues to tell him that he has decided to close his DFN account. When Moody Blues asks him why, he says because there's less of a chance of him getting caught. Okay. Side note, When you listen to him in interviews, he claims that he stopped it because it was starting to affect his family. And he always said that if anything ever comes between him and his family, he would give it up immediately. You're so full of shit. He then tells Moody Blues to talk to him on Yahoo Messenger. That same day, Kathleen, his wife, installs spyware on the computer. Genius. She's genius. During trial, she testifies. He always said that because he got home late, he couldn't go right to sleep. So he would play video games, watch TV, go on the internet for a couple of hours. Then after I got pregnant, it kept getting worse. He would stay up until 3, 4, 5 in the morning, or just not come to sleep in our bed. And then all this really weird stuff started happening. The spyware logged every keystroke that is made on the computer, every website that is visited. It takes pictures every 5 minutes of whatever is happening on the computer screen. September 12th, 2012. There were all these websites that I've never seen. Dark Fetish Net, Sexy Amazon, Stark Fet, Motherless Fet Life. I know S&M is kind of popular, like 50 Shades of Grey, but this seemed different. The girl on the front page was not alive. I noticed on one of the screen pictures that was taken, there was an email address that I didn't know about. So I logged in using the password that Gil told me to use for everything, and all of a sudden I was staring at pictures of my friends, pictures of people we knew. There were thousands. He wanted me tied up by my feet, my throat. They would have fun watching the blush out of me. He would say that the suffering was for his enjoyment over and over again, that he wanted to make it last as long as possible, that he had no remorse. She told him that she was leaving him and she was going to her mother's with the baby. She began packing, and as she calmed down, Gil claims that she looked at him and said, "This isn't goodbye forever. I'm just really freaked out right now and I need some time." That may have been true because maybe at that time she didn't know everything. Otherwise, or maybe she was still in shock. Maybe she didn't process it yet. He says that after she left, she texted him that she does love him and to look into getting a therapist so that they can figure this out. At first, Gil told his parents that Kathleen's dad had a health scare, so she had to go to Nevada to be with him. But he says that after the baby's first birthday comes and goes and they're not invited to a party, that it's time for him to come clean, obviously. I mean, they're not stupid. He goes on to say that he would speak to Kathleen only through text messages every couple of days. October 24th, 2012. Gil is off from work that day. He hears a knock at the door and he thinks that it's like the mailman with a package because he says he's not expecting anybody. So he just ignores it. Then he sends his wife a video of their dog Dudley in the dog park, and she writes back to him saying thank you, that made her so happy. A few seconds later, he gets a phone call. He answers the phone, and it's a cop on the other line, and the officer tells him that he's downstairs, that his car has been hit, the damage is pretty bad, and would he mind coming down to fill out a report? Gil says, sure, no problem. He says he goes downstairs, he goes outside, and that's when he sees 6 officers with guns raised telling him to put his hands behind his back. They handcuff him, but then they tell him that they just want to talk to him, that they are only here to talk to him, and that they're not even going to bring him to the main building, they're going to bring him to like an annex building. So he says this makes him calm down, and that's at that point that he agrees to talk because he feels like if I just talk and I just tell them what's going on, I explain this to them, I will clear everything up and I'll be back home. They get into the interview room and he even says, like, I know everybody keeps saying why after they read you your Miranda rights, why would you talk to them? You're a cop. You know you don't talk to cops. And he drives home the fact that he truly believed that this was he just had to explain this away. Maybe he did think that, because I think, like I said before, he's like, he comes off so like egotistical and like his shit doesn't stink, and he probably did think like he's gonna get away with this. I do believe that he really did think that. To his surprise, though, at the end of the interview, they tell him that he is under arrest and that he's being charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping and illegally accessing a federal law enforcement database. That's what he was using to look up information from his female victims, or fake victims, whatever he says. He even says that he was in such denial that he believed the one agent, Agent Photo, was going to convince the state to drop the charges because he seemed to be so cool with him. That's until Gilbert is in the back of a car, in the back of like an SUV, and there's an agent at the steering wheel, and Photo walks over to the other agent. He shakes his hand and he tells him, "Good job on getting him arrested." That must have been like womp womp womp. Gilbert meets with his lawyer Julia, and she actually becomes a huge part of his life. The following Monday, he walks into what's supposed to be his bond hearing, and he sits next to Julia. Julia says to him that the papers are reporting that his wife Kathleen is the one that went to the feds. Okay, well, we know by now that, yes, she's the one that went to the feds. He doesn't know this yet. So at this point, he still doesn't know that it was his wife that dropped the ball on him. And he even said that he believed that he was going to get out of this without his wife or family ever knowing a thing. Dude, like, this is what I mean. I don't know. The prosecution stood up and told the judge that Gilbert should not be given bail, going on to explain that this was more than just a computer crime. This was something he was planning on doing if he had not been caught and put into prison. Obviously, this is the huge question that still remains. I know what I think. I'll tell you what I think soon. That he stalked these girls. She goes on to talk about how he went down to Maryland to see Kimberly, about how he drove past her building, the building that she worked at. And this is significant because it was pink. And then he called her. I think this is why it stuck out in her mind. And obviously at the time, she had no idea. But Kimberly worked in a pink building, which is so cool, by the way. And when he was down in Maryland with his wife and his daughter, he drove past her work. Then he called her up and he says, "Oh, we just drove past your work and we can't wait to meet up for lunch with you." Kimberly, not knowing the sick, twisted things that her friend was planning, responds like, "Yay, I'm so excited." Okay. And it also comes out that the one juror says, after that trip, so normally, and she's such a good point, normally you would drive home from, a road trip. So say Maryland to New York, I think it's like 5 hours maybe. You get home, you would unpack, you would relax with your family. Well, Gilbert Valle got home from that road trip and he went onto the computer and he emailed Moody Blues to tell him all about his lunch with Kimberly and how she was making his mouth water. This is what I mean. Julia, the defense attorney, she stands up next and she talks about how her client did do sick things, but that it's all just fantasy. None of this is real. She compared this to a role-playing game called Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, but just like I said in the beginning of this video, like the man that sleeps with his wife's best friend and the man that gets a BJ from his female boss is not the same thing as what Gilbert Valle did. Mainly because the women in those scenarios come out of this alive. So it's there that the judge just stops her and he says, in my 20 years as a prosecutor and a judge, I have never seen allegations as horrifying as these. And Gilbert Valle says, just as predicted, he was denied bail. From November to December, Gilbert and his team exhausted all of their bail hearings, and they were denied each and every time. Then in late December, Julia comes to him and tells him that world-renowned forensic psychologist Dr. Dietz is going to fly in from California to evaluate him for 3 straight 9-hour days. Dr. Dietz has spent time with Jeffrey Dahmer, the DC sniper, and Andrea Yates. He is very, very respected. I will say that. I don't actually agree with him on this, but he is the professional. He determines that Gilbert Valle was not a threat to society at all, and he is in no way a homicidal maniac. I mean, I guess if you're comparing him to Dahmer, okay, agreed. But further concluding, though, that he was doing these things as a coping mechanism for his fantasies and his lack of sex life with his wife. Other professionals have come out to say that this is absolutely ridiculous and that no psychiatrist in the world would prescribe the things that Gilbert Valle did as a coping mechanism for his salacious thoughts. It just, that's where I'm at. That is absolutely where I'm at. What doctor is going to prescribe you this? Like, okay, well, you're having these thoughts. This is what you need to do to cope with them. No, I call bullshit. I'm sorry. I did. Okay. When the trial starts, it's 6 men and 6 women. It is said that when they went through Gilbert Valle's computer, they found 24 chats. In 21 of those chats, Gilbert says that this is all just fantasy and none of this is real. Okay. The chats go pretty much just like, Gilbert says, hi, it's Girl Meat Hunter, planning on getting me some girl meat. No matter what I say, it's make-believe. Then a subscriber says, not a subscriber. Well, yeah, I guess a subscriber says, you're wasting time, buddy. I am for real, not fantasy. But in 3 of those chats, he never says that. So in 21 of the 24 chats, he does say it's all fantasy. But then in 3 of them, he never says that. He does say things like, I am just afraid of getting caught. And if I were guaranteed to get away with it, I would do it. The subscriber says, are you sure? And Gilbert says, definitely. I would like to get my hands on a stun gun. She will be trussed up like a turkey and slid into the oven while she's still alive. Once she is unalive, I will put her out and then properly butcher her and cook her meat. The sounds of her screams will be the sweetest music to my ears. I'm in the middle of constructing a pulley apparatus in my basement to string her up by her feet. That's where she will be held and R-worded. Maybe we'll tie her up to the rotisserie and cook her outside. I'm aspiring to be a professional napper. That's my business. I am putting my neck on the line. If something goes wrong, I am in deep shit. Okay, so came as a shock to most people that the jury came back with a guilty verdict. It did not come as a shock to me, clearly. I think because I don't truly believe his story that this was all make-believe. I think that maybe it started out as make-believe, but I think that as he became more invested in it, if given enough time, that he would have done something. That is just truly what I believe. Okay, so here's my analogy that I came up with. Well, you cheat on your wife, okay, and you get away with it. So you cheat again, and you get away with it again. So then you start texting your mistress from your cell phone when you're at home with your wife, and you get away with that. So you start spending more hours at your mistress's place, and you get away with that. So then you decide to attend a friend's wedding with her, and you get away with that. How much more time did he need to keep pushing the bar before he decided to do something detrimental? That's where I'm at with this. I feel like if given enough time, maybe he would have done something. But then, in a shocking twist for me, after 17 months in prison, Gilbert Valle's defense team got his conviction overturned. And fast forward, everything is done. He was on house arrest for a little bit, but he is free and clear of everything. Everything is done. I'll leave the link to the documentary that I watched so you could see just how he talks. You could see what I mean. Like, at one point, he's in his kitchen, okay? This really got under my skin. Really got under my skin. It's when he first is on house arrest. He's in his kitchen and the film crew is there, and he has a fork in his hand. And he says to them, are you guys scared? I have a fork in my hand. And then he says, I just have to laugh about it. No, fucker. Just no, okay? There's absolutely nothing funny about what you did, and it is in no way a laughing matter. Oh my God, it got under my skin so bad. And then mom is standing behind him going, yeah, we just have to laugh about this. No, you don't just have to laugh about this. There's nothing funny about this. Like, I want to be like, what if somebody was writing this about your daughter? Oh, that you lost custody of, by the way, after your wife filed for divorce. Would you be okay with some creep writing this about your little girl on the internet and sending a picture of your little girl out and talking and saying these things about your little girl? I don't know. Maybe he would, though, because he threw his wife to the wolves. So maybe he wouldn't care. But then I think, remember that first girl, Melanie, the one that he fell really hard for? The Irish girl that wasn't the prettiest? I don't believe that he ever talks about her to any of these people. Not that I know of. And I would think by now, I would think that they would say something, because they talked about Kim, they talked about they talked about his wife, they talked about all these other girls. So I feel like she's so significant. If he was talking about her, they would have said something. I have not seen anything with her. So that's kind of interesting, right? Like, so did you really love her, your wife? I don't know. But I want to hear what you guys think. Should he be out? Like, do you think that I need to take it down? Like, am I overthinking this? I don't know. Do you think that because he never did anything that he has the right to be free and clear? I want to know. I truly want to know what you guys think. I mean, I don't know if I'll change my opinion, but I do want to know. I want to know. Then he does end the documentary talking about how he wants to meet somebody and start dating again. And you know what? At this point, it would not shock me. That absolutely would not shock me if he found somebody. It truly wouldn't. Absolutely not. But if you guys are still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Leave me a comment, please, because it really helps me out. And I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.